Your heart is racing before you even know why. Your palms are sweating over an email that hasn't even been read yet. You feel it in your chest before your mind catches up and asks, wait, what am I actually afraid of? The honest answer is that your anxiety might not belong to you at all. It might be borrowed from someone who died 100,000 years ago. Picture someone lying awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, replaying a 2-second pause in a conversation from earlier that day. Nothing happened. No one said anything unkind. And yet the body won't let it go, running the same loop over and over as if repetition might produce a different, safer outcome. That loop feels personal, even embarrassing. But it's not new, and it's not really about the conversation at all. Think about the last time you felt a spike of dread for no clear reason. Maybe your phone buzzed and your stomach dropped before you even looked at the screen. Maybe you walked into a quiet room and your body tensed before your brain registered anything wrong. That reaction wasn't a malfunction. It was a very old alarm system doing exactly what it was built to do, just aimed at a threat that doesn't exist anymore. Here's the strange part. Anxiety, in the way you experience it, isn't really about the present moment at all. It's a prediction. Your brain is constantly scanning for danger, running simulations of what might go wrong, and reacting to those simulations as if they were already happening. This system wasn't designed for emails, deadlines, or group chats gone quiet. It was designed for something much older and much simpler. Staying alive long enough to have children who also stayed alive. The neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent decades studying a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain called the amygdala. He discovered that fear doesn't start in the thinking part of your brain at all. It starts in a much faster, older pathway that bypasses conscious thought entirely. A rustle in the grass reaches your amygdala and triggers a full-body alarm before the rational part of your brain even finishes processing what made the sound. You leap back from a curled rope on a hiking trail before you've consciously registered whether it's a snake. That millisecond gap between reacting and understanding is the amygdala doing its job. It would rather you flinch 1,000 times at nothing than miss the one time it's real. There's a reason this pathway evolved to skip conscious thought entirely. Thinking is slow. Evaluating evidence, weighing probabilities, considering context, all of that takes time a person facing an actual predator doesn't have. A half-second of hesitation to confirm whether the shape in the grass is really a lion could be the difference between escaping and not escaping. So the amygdala took over the decision entirely, sacrificing accuracy for speed. It still runs that same trade today, even though almost nothing you encounter now requires that kind of speed. The overwhelming majority of modern threats, a hard conversation, a financial worry, a health scare you're Googling at midnight, could actually benefit from slower, more careful thought. But your alarm system doesn't know that. It only knows one setting: act first, ask questions later. That single design choice explains almost everything strange about modern anxiety. Your alarm system isn't calibrated for accuracy. It's calibrated for survival. And those are two very different goals. Consider what psychiatrist Randolph Ness calls the smoke detector principle. A smoke detector that only ever went off during an actual fire would be a terrible smoke detector, because by the time smoke reaches dangerous levels, it might already be too late. So a good smoke detector goes off constantly. Burnt toast. Steam from the shower. A candle. Nearly all of those alarms are false. But the cost of a false alarm, a little annoyance, is nothing compared to the cost of a missed real fire. Ness argued that your anxiety works on exactly the same math. Evolution didn't select for brains that were accurate about danger. It selected for brains that erred wildly on the side of caution, because the ancestors who assumed every shadow might be a predator lived longer than the ancestors who assumed everything was probably fine. You are, quite literally, the descendant of the most anxious humans who ever lived. Not the calmest ones. The ones who worried the most, checked the most, startled the most easily. Their descendants survived. Their calm, unbothered cousins, more often than not, did not. It's worth sitting with how uneven that trait actually was. Missing one true danger could end a person's entire genetic line in an instant. Reacting to 1,000 false alarms cost only a bit of wasted energy and a racing heart that eventually settled. Evolution doesn't grade on elegance. It grades on outcomes. And by that measure, a hypersensitive alarm system that's wrong most of the time still wins, every single generation, over a relaxed one that's occasionally caught off guard. Now picture the environment that alarm system evolved to protect you in. Small bands of people, maybe 20 to 50 individuals, moving through open landscapes full of predators, rival groups, disease, and scarcity. In that world, nearly every source of anxiety had a clear, physical, solvable shape. A lion in the grass. A stranger approaching camp. A storm on the horizon. The threat arrived, your body responded, and then, usually within minutes, it was over. You fought, you fled, or you froze, and afterward your body returned to baseline. The stress had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Modern anxiety rarely gets that ending. The biologist Robert Sapolsky spent years studying wild baboons in the Serengeti and noticed something almost unsettling. A baboon under attack from a lion shows a massive stress response, and then, minutes later, it's calm again, grooming, eating, moving on with its day. Sapolsky's key insight was that baboons, unlike humans, don't lie awake replaying the lion attack, dreading the next one, or imagining every way it could have gone worse. Their stress response turns off when the threat is gone. Yours often doesn't. You can trigger the exact same biological alarm system just by imagining a conversation that hasn't happened yet, or replaying one from 3 days ago that still bothers you. Your body can't tell the difference between an actual lion and a worry about a lion. It releases the same flood of cortisol and adrenaline either way. Sapolsky spent thousands of hours observing troops of wild baboons, close enough to know individuals by name, watching their social lives unfold in real time. What struck him most wasn't the danger itself. Baboons face real predators regularly and handle it efficiently. What struck him was how quickly the stress response switched off once the danger passed. A baboon doesn't seem to lie in bed rehearsing tomorrow's possible dangers, or replaying yesterday's near miss with a leopard. It simply doesn't have the cognitive machinery for that kind of anticipation and rumination. Humans do. That very same intelligence that lets you plan ahead, imagine consequences, and learn from the past is the same intelligence that keeps the stress response running long after any actual threat has left the scene. Sapolsky's often cited observation was blunt: we get the same diseases as baboons, ulcers, high blood pressure, heart disease, but we get them from stress we've imagined rather than stress we've actually lived through. This is where the mismatch becomes almost absurd. An email sitting unread in your inbox can trigger the same physiological cascade that once meant a predator was crouched in the grass 10 feet away. Your heart rate climbs. Your muscles tense, ready to run or fight. Your digestion slows, redirecting blood to your limbs. Every part of that response makes perfect sense if you're about to be chased. None of it helps you draft a reply. But your body doesn't know that. It's running ancient software on hardware it was never designed for. Here's the counterintuitive twist, though. If your anxiety really is 100,000 years old, that means the feeling itself was never the problem. Anxiety kept your ancestors alive. It made them check the tree line twice. It made them notice the group had gone quiet, or that a friend's tone had shifted. Anxious individuals in a small band weren't burdens, they were often the ones who spotted danger first, who kept everyone else alive by worrying on their behalf. In small groups, a certain amount of collective anxiety may have functioned almost like an immune system, a shared vigilance nobody had to think about because it was simply always running in the background. So why does it feel so unbearable now, if it once served everyone so well? Partly because the threats have multiplied while the endings have disappeared. Your ancestors faced maybe a handful of genuine threats a week. You face a constant, low-grade stream of ambiguous social and informational threats every single day, few of which ever resolve cleanly. A tense message doesn't end when you put the phone down. It waits. It can be reopened, reread, reinterpreted at 2 a.m. The lion, at least, eventually left. There's another piece worth sitting with. Your ancestors' anxiety was almost always social. Not social in the sense of small talk, but social in the sense of survival. Being excluded from the group wasn't an inconvenience back then. It was close to a death sentence. A lone human on the savannah, without the protection of a band, faced predators, starvation, and exposure with no backup. So your brain evolved to treat social rejection with something close to the same intensity as physical danger. That's why a cold reply from a friend, a meeting you weren't invited to, or a joke that landed wrong can trigger a reaction that feels wildly disproportionate to the actual event. Your brain isn't overreacting by its own logic. It's running the oldest calculation it knows: if the group turns away, I might not survive this. Modern life keeps that ancient calculation running constantly, because modern life gives you far more opportunities to feel evaluated by the group than your ancestors ever had. A read receipt with no reply. A social post with fewer likes than expected. A silence in a group chat after you've spoken. None of these are lions. All of them can trigger the same alarm a lion once did, because the part of your brain sounding the alarm has no update mechanism for this isn't actually a survival threat, it's Tuesday. Understanding where the feeling comes from doesn't make it vanish, but it does something almost as useful. It changes what the feeling means about you. The tightness in your chest before a hard conversation isn't proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that you're carrying a very old, very effective survival system that hasn't been told the war is mostly over. The ancestors who felt nothing in the face of danger rarely lived long enough to pass that calm down to you. You inherited the worried ones instead, because worry, for most of human history, worked. There's a kind of relief hiding inside that reframe. You're not broken. You're not weak. You are, in a very literal biological sense, extremely well protected, running a defense system built by hundreds of thousands of years of trial and error, refined across more generations than you could ever count. That system just hasn't received the memo that the savannah is gone, that most modern dangers arrive as thoughts rather than teeth, and that not every silence, every pause, every unanswered message is the group turning its back on you. Tonight, when your heart races over something you can't quite name, when your stomach tightens before you've even read the message, remember what that feeling actually is. Not a flaw. Not weakness. Just a 100,000-year-old alarm system, still faithfully doing its job, still trying to keep a version of you that no longer exists safe from a lion that isn't there anymore.